Okay, count off.
1,
2, 3, 4, 5.
America, a nation full of contradictions. From jumbo shrimp to bittersweet chocolate, there are some things that can never be understood in the paradox of life. But perhaps one of the most perplexing contradictions manifests itself in the American justice system. It is bizarre that a nation who prides itself on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness will condemn the practice of murder by committing the very same act. As former President Lincoln described our great nation as a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, we as collective individuals sitting in this room and among this great nation as a whole have not only the right of moral obligation to reform the practice of capital punishment and abolish the death penalty as a whole, based on the premises of 1, treating this matter under national jurisdiction, 2, recognizing that the death penalty does not dissuade criminals, 3, the moral and financial cost, and finally, the high probability of making mistakes with this antiquated punishment mechanism. My first contention of reasoning for abolishing the death penalty lies in the need for this social issue to be a matter of national law and not state law. If you focus your attention to the graphic, you can see a screen which indicates the legality of the death penalty in various states in the U.S. The yellow represents states that are for the death penalty, and the blue is states that have abolished the death penalty. As you can see, 32 states adhere to the standard of allowing the death penalty. While most states consider death penalty to be a standard or typical, what most people don't realize is that apart from Japan, the United States is the only industrial democracy that recognizes the death penalty, as reported by CNN last week. All states should have a level playing field in punishing the convicted. The borders in which a crime was committed should not define the fate of criminals. It is completely unreasonable to sentence one criminal to death in one state, but sentencing the exact same criminal convicted in the exact same crime a totally different sentence, depending entirely on one factor: geographic location. The facts are clear as day. The balance of the justice system has been altered and will only be back into equilibrium if the matter of capital punishment is found to be under national jurisdiction and abolished entirely. One of the reasons that capital punishment needs to be abolished lies in the second area of analysis, which proves that the death penalty does not discourage criminals from committing such callous crimes. A criminal irrational enough to senselessly murder has no cognitive or moral understanding of the implications of a crime, and therefore will not be faced by the death penalty or its consequences. While some states are pro-capital punishment stance may say that it sets an example, hold an irrelevant argument when presented with the raw data and facts. An article released last year by Listverse News found that in 2012, nearly 15,000 people were victims of murder, an awful, irreversible crime. Capital punishment has clearly shown that it does not dissuade criminals from committing such terrible acts. Alternative forms of punishment, such as life sentences without parole, are perhaps more unsettling to a criminal by taking away their independence. An ABC News report in the beginning of this year found that many criminals prefer the death penalty over life sentences and view the death sentence as almost a reward or perhaps even an escape from their impending fate of rotting away in prison from old age. Many criminals on death row have nothing to lose, and death is almost an easy way out versus spending the rest of their lifetime suffering beneath the fortitude of four walls. My next point argues the cost is high, both morally and also financially. With the death penalty, there is so much more to lose. Richard Dieter, the executive director of the Death Penalty Information Center, has spent years studying costs associated with the death penalty. In his research, he has found that the cost of the death penalty far exceeds the cost of posting a criminal in prison for the rest of their lifetime. The cost is so much greater because the stakes are higher in a capital punishment case. Extensive, costly trials for death penalty often requires more experts, more attorneys, more trials, and often more use of various appeals by the inmate once convicted and sentenced. Morally championing the capital punishment promotes a vengeance-seeking nation. The death penalty itself does not honor a victim, it degrades the integrity our justice system. There are other ways to hold these criminals accountable, but if we continue a mindset of an eye for an eye, we will all be blinded by social injustice. Finally, my last contention finds that the death penalty makes an irreversible, unequivocal, and deathly mistakes that affect innocent lives. While proponents of the death penalty may boast that the evolution of DNA analysis has made incriminating evidence foolproof, cold, hard facts prove otherwise. Russ Feingold, the U.S. Senator from Wisconsin, reported that since the reinstatement of the modern death penalty, 87 people have been freed from death row because they were later proven innocent. This proves an error rate in 1 innocent person out of every 7 people executed. Furthermore, an April 2014 article in the Huffington Post stated that more than 4% of all inmates who have been convicted and sentenced to death are innocent. This proves that certain unavoidable mistakes are being made by the death penalty. Now that all the facts have been presented, it is now time for capital punishment reform. By placing the death penalty under national jurisdiction, we need to abolish the practice altogether. Because it does not dissuade criminals, it has a higher moral and financial cost and is proven to make mistakes. History is a window into the past and offers insight as we reform and change our attitudes. I feel certain that decades from now, we will be appalled at our generation for allowing something as grotesque as the death penalty to happen. A call of action is needed from each and every one of you, because with awareness becomes responsibility. The responsibility to take a stance and make a change. In addition to changing your everyday dialogue and attitude about the death penalty, you can also contact Rick Halprin, who is the head of the Texas Division of the Amnesty International Project, which start repealing the case law regarding the death penalty and have the ultimate goal of ending capital punishment permanently. Everyday, ordinary people have the potential to make an extraordinary change. I hope you take this matter seriously and begin your individual journey to abolish the death penalty.